Stuart, thanks for your time here at Colney. We'll come on to the actual season, but obviously it's the first chance we've had to have a chat with you about January and what the club did in terms of ins and outs. Just firstly, give us your overall assessment of how the window looked from your perspective for Norwich.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good window. I think if we looked at the objectives we've set ourselves leading into the window, we want to make at least 2 additions to help the first team here and now. We would have liked a third, to be honest, and that's a tinge of disappointment that we didn't get the third one. But we got 2 senior players, one of which we own in terms of Lucas Rupp, who I think will be good for the short, medium, and longer term. And then obviously Duda, who is a fantastic player, with what he did last year in the Bundesliga, and I think in his short time with us has shown that he's brought us something a little bit different, which maybe we were missing in the first half of the season. So I think from that point of view, really good. And then also I think looking more to the mid-term, with the younger players that we sign in terms of Melvin, City and Sam McCallum, I think hopefully they'll prove to be sort of smart business decisions in the future, and will certainly help this club in the mid-term. And I think we talk about it a lot of. It's never just today. We have to be constantly thinking about tomorrow and the day after, and we've got to constantly I talk about investing in the root, not just in the fruit. And I think we try and do that every transfer window. We try and bring a balance to it to make sure that the group has got succession plan for the future. That we've got talents all the way through the club, whether that's from the under-9s all the way through to sort of under-23s, who are either ours or ones that we have to buy in. So I think overall a pretty pleasing January. I think certainly better than the summer. I look back at the summer with a tinge of disappointment. And I think probably. I and we sort of let Daniel down a little bit when I look back in the summer with some hindsight and think that wasn't a good enough window. Patrick didn't do well enough for us. Ibrahim didn't do well enough for us, and that's I have to take full responsibility for that, and I've got no problem standing up and facing that and facing what questions come away on that. But I think this January is much better, and gets us hopefully back on track for the second half of the season and obviously the mid-term as well.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to press you on obviously Roberts and Amadou specifically, but before we get to those, the lads you did bring in, the 2 essentially younger players in the last week of the window, what have you got and why were you so keen to bring those in, Melvin, City and Sam McCallum?
Yeah, so I mean, both obviously different players in terms of their positions and profiles, but Melvin's a player we've been watching in France. We've been watching in France for quite a long time. One of our scouts, Lee Dunn, who does France, flagged him really early, and he's been sort of through the process. And I felt he fit the bill of a Norwich sort of signing and the type of signing we make. So he's a young player. He's playing some first team football. He's got a really good profile from a physical point of view. He was out of contract in the summer, so he was, A, we could afford him, and B, he was willing to come. So that sort of ticked a lot of boxes for us. He's got a lot to do, and the step when he comes here in the summer is going to be really big for him. And then similar with Sam McCallum, Sam, we are a little bit short in terms of homegrown players. That's a fact. So we've got to do that. Also, if you look at left backs, are so hard to find in this sort of day and age. So to have him with his athletic profile, but also with Sam, his route is really interesting for us. I think we are a club who give opportunities for players who come through a different sort of route as well. And if you look from his non-league stuff through to going to Coventry, and his growth in 18 months at Coventry has been sort of quite incredible, really. They're second as we stand here in Division 1, in League 1. That's a real tough league to play in. It's the same level that Ben Godfrey went and had all his games for Shrewsbury, for example. So with him, it was an opportunity to get a really highly rated young player who's got a lot to do and a lot of work to do. But for us, our only opportunity to get him was that now. If we would have waited till the summer, it would have become too expensive. Maybe bigger clubs would have been able to get him, and certainly if Coventry got promoted or get promoted and then he starts playing Championship football, we're out the race then. I've always said that we can't afford established British Championship players. They're so hard to get. So it's about us taking some calculated risks to get them early, and I think as we've proven, some of them work out outstandingly well, and some of them don't, and that's a fact. But we have to be quite philosophical about that in terms of not getting too caught up on the successes, of I don't know, a Buendia or whatever, but then also not getting too down on when one goes wrong, like a Ben Marshall, because in terms of recruitment, you'll never get them all right, and you'll never get them all wrong. But when you're dealing with the resources that we're dealing with, we have to take risks. We took risk on a Tim Krul, we took a risk on a Timu Puki. We took risks on Sean Raggett. And that's our model, and with that comes some where they don't work, but it's very much risk versus reward. But both of them players certainly fitted in on the type of profile of player we look for.
Wouldn't expect you to talk in terms of the cost of a McCallum deal, but the reports from the Midlands media was that you paid upwards of sort of £3 million. I mean, that seems an awful lot of money, but you're smiling there. So is that something you want to come back on?
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously read the stuff as well, and listen, the guys up at Coventry have got a job to do to, they've sold their best asset, and that's probably disappointed a lot of people up there from within the club and the supporters. So, yeah, listen, I think everyone knows us well enough that we're not paying £3 million for a 19-year-old who's played 21 games in League One. Can the deal get up towards them figures? Yeah, absolutely. If he plays for England and comes and plays first team games for us, of course he can. Like most of our deals are structured in a way that if the player really succeeds, the club that they've come from should be part of that. A bit like us with Maddison with the sale. If he goes and plays for England and Leicester get in the Champions League, of course we should get a little bit more reward for that. So yeah, of course the figure was nowhere near the reported £3 million guaranteed. I can't obviously say what it was for you'll appreciate the reasons why, but yeah, we wouldn't be paying that for a young player like that.
You've touched on the two who obviously didn't work, and you've spoken about the roll in the dice almost element of recruitment, as much as you try and be as scientific as you can be. But Patrick Roberts didn't really get a look in terms of the Norwich first team. He went back, and then he's obviously now moved on to Middlesbrough. And then on the final deadline night itself, you allowed Ibrahim Amadou to go back to Spain. Why did you make those calls in the window, and why do you think those two didn't work?
Yeah, I think if we look at Patrick first, I was really disappointed with that. I truly believed that Patrick would come here and be able to make a difference. That didn't happen. Facts is, he didn't do enough when he had the opportunities, and then probably in the end he didn't get enough opportunities due to the form of Buendia, Campbell and Hernandez. In fairness, it's if you look at it, who would have predicted Todd pretty much playing every game and having 6 goals and 2 assists at this stage of the season? So I think circumstance lent itself to that, and I had a good relationship with Patrick, and obviously a really good relationship with Man City, and myself, Daniel, the guys at Man City, Neil Adams, had a real honest conversation probably in about November of, listen, if Patrick needs to be playing football. He's a young footballer. He had a stop-start season last year at Girona. He couldn't afford to have another stop-start season this year. Unfortunately, that's how it worked out through nobody's fault. It sometimes happens. So we made the call early to go, right, let's let him go back in January and go out and play some football. Patrick agreed with that, his agent agreed with that, and we all shook hands at the end, and we look back and go, it didn't work. As disappointing as it didn't, that's a fact. And then if you look at Ibrahim, we actually didn't really want to go, if we're honest, but we looked at the situation again and suddenly thought, for the first time we got 3 centre-backs fit. Tim Closer isn't a million miles away, so that cover area there, maybe, he wasn't needed. And the facts are that when fit, Alex Tetty or Tom Tribal were ahead of him in the pecking order as a defensive midfielder. That's a fact. So again, it came back to an honest conversation that I had with the player and with Daniel and the agent to go, listen, we'd love you to stay, but can we guarantee you're going to play much football? No, we can't. So if there is an opportunity that you want to go, we're not going to stand in your way, because one thing myself and Daniel are big on are not killing players' careers, and not being so selfish that you keep someone on the off chance that you might need them for 10 minutes in a game. We don't believe in doing that. And Ibrahim made it really clear that he wanted to go and he needed to go and play some football for his career, and we totally respected that. So obviously came a lot later than we expected. That was literally lastminute.com, but off he went, and we wish him well, and really disappointed it didn't work out, because he was a signing that we truly believed was going to come and make a real big difference to this team, and that didn't happen. At the same time, he helped us out at many opportunities and got us out of a hole, and he'll always be remembered for playing in that Man City game. I'm sure he'll be one of the names that, in 20 years when people are saying name the starting 11, he might be forgotten a little bit, but he'll be part of the club history, I think, forever because of that game. But for sure we expected and wanted him to have done a lot better, and he didn't, and for that we have to be disappointed.
In terms of, I mean, if I was to list all the players you were linked with in January, then we'd probably still be here tonight. But there was one that did seem a little bit of traction behind. Is there anything with the young lad from Luxembourg, Daniel Sinani? Is there an interest there? Is there anything you can say on that? Yeah,
so for sure he's a player of interest to us. He's out of contract in the summer. We were never going to bring him in January. That was never on our agenda, to be honest. But yeah, he's one we're interested for the medium term. He's a good player, albeit playing at a very difficult sort of level to really sort of assess. But again, he maybe fits a little bit the type of player that we look for. So if we could do something, we'd be really happy. But respect, he's under contract at the club he's at the moment, and although we, with a European player, we can officially speak to him. I don't think it's right to talk too much about him, but I'm not going to sit here and lie and go we don't know him or he's not a player of interest, because he is.
Speculation obviously works both ways in terms of players you might be linked with, and as again any Norwich fan would know, your better younger players. So in January, despite all the speculation, was there any decision to be made? Was there any firm offers that you had to sit down and have a conversation with the various parties here, with any of your key players?
No, and to be honest, it was a disappointing month from that point of view, in terms of just the constant speculation, that we had to deal with every day. We had to deal with every day Max, Todd, Pookie, Buendia, Ben Godfrey, every day in the media of this club, that club, that club, and it's a bit like, I've been fortunate enough to work at one of these big clubs. When you want to play, you just go and sign them. You don't mess around. You don't leak it in the Daily Star and the Sun. You go and get the deal done. And I think all this noise around them, I think it's really hard for our players to contend with. I think it's hard for their families to contend with. And I actually find it really disrespectful to our club. We're playing Premier League football. We've given every one of these players an opportunity. Grant Hanley said something in the media a few weeks ago. Someone sent it to me where he's like, this club doesn't owe the players anything. And he's right. This club doesn't owe the players or staff or anyone anything. This club's given us all an opportunity, and every one of them players in that dressing room has had fantastic opportunity, been fantastically rewarded for what they've achieved at the club so far. So when I see this constant speculation and the assumptions that, of course, if Norwich go down, or even if they don't go down, these players will be sold. It's like, hang on a minute, when players were signing 4 and 5 year contracts, we couldn't then turn around and go, if they didn't perform, can we have the money back? It doesn't work like that. Likewise, if they suddenly go, we want to make a move, they don't just go, and I think people have short memories. We sold James Maddison for over 20 million when we were in the Championship, and at that time we were desperate for money. We're now in a situation, whatever division we're in, that we're not desperate for money. So players will only ever go on our terms, and I'd ask for people to remember where they've come from, for the people around them to respect what this football club has done for everybody. It's made people earn a lot of money, been able to play at the highest level, with a coach that gives unbelievable trust, and don't disrespect that, and don't just think that in summer I'll be off, because it doesn't work like that. It's about being good people, being humble, being respectful. And you know what, if the time comes that one of these massive clubs which are linked every day want you, no problem, we have a conversation. We understand our players, our staff want to work at the highest level possible, absolutely, but there comes a time for that. And I think if you look at, say, the Liverpool game on Saturday, you look at some of their players, take Trent Alexander-Arnold, that is what world class looks like. We've played games where you see Harry Maguire, bang, no, that's world class. That's a level that we should all want to sort of aspire to, whether that's me in my role wanting to aspire to be Michael Edwards, the sporting director at Liverpool, because that's what world class looks like in my role, not what I've done so far, or whether it's players. And I think it's about people remembering that and remembering the steps that it takes to get that, and not just maybe the ego taking over of the people around them of, I'm a Premier League player now. Well, no, at the minute we've proven that we're good enough to be 20th in the Premier League, and quite frankly that's not where any of us want to be. So yeah, it was a frustrating January, because I think it breeds a little bit of distrust between everybody of what if there was a bid or whatever, and yeah, it was disappointing, and it was a tough month of Daniel every 3 days having to respond to it, myself having to respond to it, when frankly there was nothing there, and that, yeah, it becomes annoying, to be honest with you, and it becomes very draining, and you just want people to just let these guys focus on being the best footballers they can be. And you know what, if Man United, Tottenham, Arsenal, whoever want them, they'll come and get them when the time's right, because they don't need to mess around. You know, Man United proved that. If you take Dan James last year, they don't mess around, they just go and sign him. That's what they do, because they've got that much power and that much money to do it. If Man United want one of our players, they can definitely afford them and definitely attract them. So they won't mess around. If the time comes, they'll come. So yeah, it was a tough month, but they're still here, which was no surprise to me. And yeah, we'll see what the summer brings, but certainly it won't be, if anyone wants to go, it won't be easy.
Okay, yeah, and on that point, and it's probably worth me stressing that we sat here and there's still 12 games left in the season, and okay, we all know the mathematics and the gap, very, very difficult, but there is still a chance you can still be in the Premier League. But clearly, in your role, you wouldn't be doing your job if you wasn't planning for various different scenarios, whether you're in the Premier League come the summer, whether you're back in the Football League. Is it a case now that you have to prepare not just almost two plans, but within that, you know, as you say, there's so many moving parts. If that player went, would we have a replacement lined up? If that player went, on the flip side, you'd probably, if you're in the Championship, you'd look to refresh the squad to give Daniel the best chance of coming back. So in your mind, is it almost working overtime and going into the summer period, irrespective of what league you're in, that there is not just one or two plans, there's got to be within that subsets and various different scenarios that you've got to plan for in your role now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's constantly the job. I think the only time it wasn't was probably after Christmas of the first year, when we probably knew we were going to be in the Championship. Well, barring we were going to win 15 out of 15 at the end, which we weren't never going to do that. So that made it easy, because we knew, right, we're in a Championship, let's sort of get planning. Last year was difficult because we had both scenarios again of, okay, we could be in the Premier League here because we've genuinely got a chance of getting promoted, or we could still be back in the Championship. This year's the same. You know, we could be in the Premier League or we could be back in the Championship. So yeah, it's our jobs to constantly be looking at plans, being prepared for both situations, so that Daniel can really focus on the short term of trying to get results, because there's 12 games left plus a cup game. We've still got another competition which we can win. Sounds ridiculous, but we're in it. So let's not if we don't believe we can win it, let's give all the 9,000 people their money back and not turn up at Spurs. So we have got still opportunities this season. I think if you look at the performances since we've had centre backs available, they've been very good. There's probably only Man United away where I thought we weren't good enough. I think the other games you can genuinely make a case for we could have won every game. Now, of course, we could have lost every game. So we're not far away, and that has to give us belief in the last 12 games, because again, if not, let's just not bother to turn up at Wolves on Sunday or Leicester the following Friday. We're in every game, and we look a really good team, and we don't look far away. Facts are, we'd rather have more points, absolutely, and maybe we'd rather have more points and look a million miles away. But we are where we are, and until it's mathematically impossible, we have to keep going. If you look at over the years gone by, Leicester, when they stayed up the year before they won the league, they were dead and buried, really. Sunderland have done it. It's possible. We're not talking about trying to come back from 10 points adrift with only 9 points to play for. That's impossible. We're talking about a situation here of if we win half of our games, 6 out of the 12, we'd have an unbelievable opportunity. Now, to win 6 is going to be difficult. We've only won 4 all season, so to suddenly go and win 6 out of 12 is a big ask, absolutely. But we're not a million miles away, and I think it's been really pleasing this year how the players, the supporters, the coaching staff have kept that belief throughout, because you wouldn't turn up here and think this is a club at the bottom of the Premier League and it's doom and gloom. But I think we messaged and we set out our stall from the start that this was going to be hard. This isn't a surprise to us that it's difficult. We're not sat here going we weren't expecting it to be hard. We did, and as Daniel talks about, we're trying to work on a miracle, and if we can create that, brilliant. If we can't, well, we'll be prepared for what comes next. And in my job, that's the key: is you have to be prepared and not get too caught up in the here and now, because you've got to be thinking about the medium and the long term. And if the worst happens, right, thinking about how do we get back up. If the best happens, how do we make sure we're not in this situation again where we're 7 points adrift in February? That's the things that we need to think about and we need to improve and get better at.